Cheers and welcome to Bitter Reality Brewing. Yes, we're doing the Pot-au-Brew. It's the first brew I've done with the Pot-au-Brew so far. You may have seen the teaser talking about it, holidays, Christmas, all that stuff, but we're actually going to brew with it. Then we're gonna ferment with it, and then we're gonna serve, all from the same pot. Yeah. Who invented this thing? Well, it's from Homebrew Labs, and the inventor is Trong. Pretty much every home brewer's favorite inventor out there. He's in California, and he just is constantly improving not only what he's inventing, but improving other things in home brewing and coming out with cool inventions that benefit pretty much every home brewer that's ever bought anything from him. Yeah, huge, huge, huge. Is Floating Dip Tube 2.x, as I call it, because it's constantly being little tweaks. That thing has saved me, especially when I do beers with like berries and fruit. It gives me the majority of my beer and leaves the pulp behind. It doesn't clog, and it just does a great job. So let's get into this. This is called a Pot-au-Brew. What is a Pot-au-Brew? Well, it is everything. And this is a series. I will be putting this in a playlist for Pot-au-Brew. So if you want to just see stuff about Pot-au-Brew, you can watch that playlist. But I'm gonna do an IPA, and I'm like, then I'm like, ooh, let's do an Anchovy IPA. Yeah. Worst name you could ever think of for a hop. But the flavors on this thing sound very mild, even though it's 12% alpha. And I'm like, you know what? I just about finished my keg on my cold IPA. I think I've only found like one decent cold IPA out there commercially. I'm sorry, brewers out there and breweries, but I've loved every cold IPA I've made, whether it's a kit or something I made from scratch. I don't know what the difference is. Maybe I'm putting in more hops, I don't know, but the cold IPAs I brew, I love. I enjoy them, they're fresh, they're good. I drink the hell out of them. So we're gonna do a cold IPA. And with the ale yeast I was gonna use, we're gonna sit at about 7.1, but actually doing the cold IPA, the yeast I'm using is gonna put me up around 6.6% if everything goes as planned. No, you don't need a grain malt or grain mill, but if you want one, I'll leave links down below for everything, including this, and a deal on the Pot-au-Brew. I'll tell you again about that at the end of the brew. But yeah, a really sweet deal, save you some money on this thing. And yes, it's an affiliate link, but that's okay. Actually, it's an affiliate code, not a link, but hey. What are we doing? I'd tell you it's 2 pounds of Pilsner, but I'd be lying. It's 1 pound, 14 ounces of Pilsner, 2 ounces of Victory malt, one of my favorite adjunct malts, because that malt will give me hints of caramel and will give me hints of biscuit, giving it a little more character. And then I'm gonna add 2 ounces of corn sugar. You don't need to, your ABV might be lower, maybe you need to make up with grains. The reason I'm doing it is I want to dry my beer out a little bit, leave it a little, just too many reasons. Basically a slightly lighter body and a little drier on the taste. And I like that. That's, yeah, you brew for yourself. That's one of the things that's great about the Pot-au-Brew. You can do 2 gallons, which is probably the perfect amount for most people. I'm only gonna do 1 gallon right now. I've got so many other beers going, I don't really need any more beer, and I'm doing more of an experiment because I really want to try the anchovy hops, see how they come out. The flavors are very mild and aromas are very mild from my understanding, so that's why I want to allow them into a cold IPA where they're gonna stand out a little bit more. We're gonna dump a whole ounce in too. So that's pretty much everything that's going on. I haven't even started brewing with this thing before. First brew on camera. I'm gonna pop it open. And yes, this is a stainless steel pressure cooker. No, we are not brewing under pressure. I know you're thinking we are. I'll take this out. It's a temp probe. And the reason I'm taking it out is because I'm setting the lid down and I don't want this to get bent. So we're gonna set that aside. This is super cool if you haven't seen this. Clamps on the side, has a zipper so I can take it apart, I can wash it. This will be our hop basket. Yeah, it's all good. We have a Jellyfish, it's a cool spunding valve. Very cool spunding valve. We have a, whoops, I think I took it out of the box already. Yep, FLOATit. 2.x as I call it, because it's constantly being improved. Floating dip tube, short hose because hey, it's going in here. Doesn't need a long hose. Then I have my CO2 regulator. That way, when we're serving the beer, I can control the pressure. And we have a picnic tap, which means we can now serve the beer with a very short tap, and we don't need an excessively long tap with a mile-long hose or any of that other garbage. Medical grade filter there so that we can allow oxygen in during fermentation initially, which will help the yeast repopulate, grow very quickly. Then we can pop this off and let things go on its own. Yeah, and that'll keep from getting lactic, you know, bacteria. It'll just keep it out of our fermentation. This is a very expensive keg lube that he sends because you have a rubber grommet that goes around here, or gasket, however you want to call it. But that's it. This is stainless. You don't need, and yes, I'll leave a link for something like this, but you don't need an induction burner. But if you have one, this thing, the base is designed to take advantage of an induction burner. It is a very, very nice system, and it's a lot taller and skinnier than a lot of your other types of pressure cookers. That's by design. You can do 2 gallons. We're only gonna do 1 gallon. We're only gonna use 2 pounds of grain. I'm going to use a colander and a spare pot to strain it out, strain it back, call it a day. He is working on a much better brew to bag than this one, so that if you only want it to be in 1 pot, you could strain that out and call it a day too. But let me get cleaned up, let me get the water in there. My recommendation, use good water if you're brewing because you want good beer. Don't pull it from your tap. You know what's there, chloramine, chlorine. You do one of 2 things. You either go get yourself some good spring water, or you can do some basics on brewing salts. If you're using reverse osmosis, which is gonna have a hint of brewing salts still in them, technically, or salts, or if you're using distilled or deionized. I prefer deionized. I'll leave my brewing salts over here so you can see exactly what I'm using on my beer batch here. So if you get interested in it, you can figure it out. It's not hard, it's not rocket science. You want to take a deep dive and understand it to where you can create your own, that's a little harder. But if you just want to copy what's out there for certain styles, it's very easy. Let's get brewing. Okay, so I'm heating up the water. I put in 1 3/4 gallons. You could go probably 1.5 gallons easy or less because the boil off, based on the intensity of the boil off. I'm gonna make sure my boil off's good. I already measured what 1 gallon is in here. Keep in mind when 1 gallon is close to boil, it's gonna expand. I think it's something like 4%. I used to know the exact number, but it's okay. You can use this from the lid to check the temperature. If you don't have another way of doing it easily, it works. Do not leave the lid on it and walk away. It's bad for any system. If you're gonna be standing around, putting the lid on it will help it get hotter faster, but you need to keep an eye on that temperature. You don't wanna make it explosive. Being a pressure cooker, it could probably handle it, but I'm just saying you don't wanna open it then and, yeah. So I'm gonna get it up to about probably 155, 156. And you may ask yourself, well, wait a minute. Thought he said he was going to put it in at 150. I am, because when it hits up around 156, 157, I will turn off the power. I will start stirring the grains in with a spoon, and the temperature will drop because the grains are cold, the water's gonna be hot. It'll bring it down. I'll double check the temperature. If it's not right at 150, and I say that meaning it's not gonna be 150, 152, it'll be 150 or somewhere closer to 148. I can always hit it, stir, until I get up close to 150. Usually if you're using an induction burner and you don't have absolute control over temperature, which mine doesn't, you can get up to about 149, kill the power, and it'll overshoot by about 1 degree. Hey, you're at the right mash temp. Once we get to that mash temp, we're gonna put the lid on and cover it up. We wanna keep that heat in there, and we wanna let it just sit for 75 minutes. I will periodically check it about every 15 to 20 minutes, add a little heat if I need to bring it up to where it needs to be. Not a big deal, very easy. Okay, we'll resume once I get up to temp. Okay, now let's say you overshoot your mash temp. Yeah, or your strike temp. Not a big deal. Just stir, you'll see some steam coming out, and you're gonna reduce that heat. Not a problem at all. I'm gonna get it down to about 157, because I'm at 160, and we're gonna mash in. Actually, it's already dropping. I'm down to looks like about 158. So I'm gonna go ahead and just mash in, hope for the best. Spoon. Yeah, you have one, you gotta have one. Take your grains and just stir. Just stir. And you wanna put them in nice and slow. Nice and slow. This isn't a race. And doing that nice and slow will keep you from having little balls. We don't want dough balls, we're not baking. We're brewing. Now I'm going kind of fast, but I got a lot of water in here, probably more than I need, like I said. I know my boil off's gonna be really good with this induction burner, so I'm not too worried. Your mileage may vary. Okay. I can, my grist, as they call it, is very thin. I have way more water than I need, but like I said, the boil off's gonna be really good. So I may not even do that sparge I mentioned earlier. And let's check the temp here. I'm betting I'm pretty close to where I need to be. I don't have the best of luck. There we go. It looks like I'm going to be dead on to 150. Yeah, it's settling out right at 150. I nailed it. Yes. So what are we going to do if I'm dead on 150 and I don't have to cool down? Two things. We're going to put this back on. Do not turn the heat on. And if you noticed, I did not seal it. I'm going to stick this back in. I'm going to grab a little paper towel because I had some liquid on here. There we go. Actually, I had a little bit of grain too, so we'll get all that off. I'm putting that in there. It'll go back up in temp. I'm not worried because I took it out. It cooled down. Yeah, it's sitting right at 150. And like I said, about every 15, actually with this is kind of cool. Hey, Trong, I just found out something new. I can check the temperature without opening it. That's even better because it's just like a fridge or an oven. Every time you open it, yeah, fridge, you're losing the cooling, oven, you're losing the heat. I don't have to open it unless it looks like it's down about 3 or 4 degrees. And then I can just spike it. I would open it and give it a good stir just to make sure your temperature is evenly distributed and then close it back up. But yeah, I think I'm right at, yeah, I'm dead on 150. So we'll be here for 75 minutes. Okay, so we've been at 170 for about 10 minutes and all I did was take the lid off, heat it up, and just keep stirring it until I got up to 170. I didn't even put the lid back on, I just let it sit there, it was fine. You're just getting ready to, what they call mash out. And I cannot say this enough. Do not walk away with this lid on it, even if it's not tight. Do not boil or try to heat up to boil with the lid on it. It's dangerous, okay? You've been warned. Just saying, you don't want a Darwin Award, okay? We're gonna now dump all of this into a colander because I chose not to use my brew in a bag. And I'm just gonna let it drip. Then I'm gonna go over here, put the same colander over here and pour it again. Why am I pouring it twice? It'll just grab any bits and pieces that I missed the first time. That's all. And my other colanders kind of got bigger holes too. So that one I'm used to doing that and I just do it with the small one because it's a habit. So I'm gonna go ahead, pour this and you can watch me pour it. I got these to grab hold of. Oops, make sure you grab hold of these and nothing else. Okay, I have found a problem. It is heavy. It is very heavy. Okay, if you're not doing a brew in a bag and you're doing like me, have some heat protection because I'm grabbing these, but they're kind of small and I really want to get a good grip. So I've got to touch it. And then I'm just going to dump it. That's all I'm doing. I got to get all that out. This is where a little bit of sparge water helps. So I'm going to heat up some sparge water real quick. 32 ounces technically, because I'll rinse it a couple times with about 8 ounces at a time. Okay, I'm going to start rinsing this. So let's hold it up like this. Cool enough that I can grab hold of those handles now and not have to worry about my hand bumping into something. There we go. I'll do a little more over here. Should get your sparge water up to about 170 to 168. Mine's, yeah, not that hot, but I'm not worried. Gonna boil it anyways, you know what I'm saying? But yeah. Okay, there we go. Our pot is nice and clean. You can hear that dripping. Doesn't really matter. The key for running it through the colander is just to get the grains out of the liquid. So when I pick it up, I'm gonna make a hot mess. That's why I would let it drain a little bit more. So I'm just gonna get in like this and boom, we're in. That easy. Okay, now this one has big giant handles, so I should be okay. But I'm gonna pour slow. Don't wanna make a mess, and I wanna get it all through there. And you should always sparge very slow. I'm not really worried about sparging right now. This is just me dumping the existing wort through the same grains, almost like what they call a vorloff when you're running it around in a big pot. But I'm just getting the grain bits out. That's all I'm worried about right now. I'm not really sparging. My back was hurting, so I had to turn it. I didn't do it for any particular reason other than my back was getting sore. Doesn't matter what you pick up or what you hold. The longer you hold it, the heavier it gets. But a drill sergeant telling me after a 12-mile march that we could probably feel like we could fly. And yeah, you take that 70-pound pack and set the M16 away and or check it back in, should we say? Yeah, you really do feel like you can fly. Stuff's heavy. Okay, I got a little bit left of this, so we'll go ahead. This is what I'm gonna pour slow, because we're trying to rinse any existing sugars in here that have not already been rinsed off. This is going to also require me to boil a little longer. It's only gonna do a 60-minute boil. I may have to go a little longer, we'll see. That is another trick I like, is adding my hops in the last 5 minutes. I take a wood spatula, I verify where my 1 gallon is. I know to allow for a little bit more due to the heat. And then I can check it, and I know that maybe I need to boil off a little more before I start my 5-minute countdown. Just a little trick, helps a lot. Okay, another thing you can do, if you do happen to have another pot and you're not doing a boil in a bag, once this is done draining to a degree, you can take it, put it in your other pot, let it drain a little more, and then just dump that in there. Okay, I'm gonna actually do that so we can get this up to a boil and we don't have to sit around waiting. I don't want that sitting on top because then I can't monitor the temperature. So I'm gonna turn it on, I'm gonna hit boil, and it's gonna heat up. Once we get to a boil, I'm looking for a 60-minute boil. Like I said, I'll have to check my liquid, see how I'm doing. Only need about 1.5 gallons. I sadly went to 2 gallons, so I'm probably gonna have to do a 90-minute boil to get that extra half gallon. I have the camera angled down so you can see something, because this is the most critical point of your brew for danger. That foam is slowly rising, and one of 2 things is gonna happen. Either the liquid will break through, called a break, and we'll have a great little boil. Or the foam will continue to rise and it will foam over. If you've ever boiled a bunch of potatoes and had a boil over, same thing, very sticky, very messy. Okay, I'm starting to get a break. If you don't get a break, a couple things you can do. Mist it with cold water, take it off the heat, of course. There's a thing called defoamer, 5-star defoamer, works great. Looks like I'm getting a really good break. The other thing is you're gonna wanna be there and you're just gonna stir it, okay? That stir will help with that break. There are some people who will skim this protein off. I'm told good and bad. I don't know which to believe. Never really did a taste test with one and one without, but I'm not worried. Not gonna hurt me, it's extra work. Just, yeah. And that will fall out of suspension during the fermentation, so. Okay, we're getting a really strong boil. I may need to turn the temperature down a little so I get a nice rolling boil. You don't want it to boil over. A good, nice rolling boil is all you need. And 60 minutes is more than enough, but if you have too much liquid and you're doing a late hop addition, you can get away with a good 90-minute boil and not have to worry about it. So we're gonna be here for at least 60 minutes. Last 5 minutes, we're gonna drop the hops. Anchovy, yes, that's right, anchovy hops. No fish included, just, or no fish were harmed in this brew. So we're gonna drop some anchovy hops in here for 5 minutes. Once we're done with that, we're gonna cool it down. How do you cool it down? Well, wear safety, to protect your hands. And you can do it a couple ways. You can, of course, let it cool down on its own, which is gonna take a while, not recommend it. You can put it in an ice bath. You can put it in a sink, if your sink's big enough, and just get ice water on it. Make sure that the ice water doesn't go any higher than the liquid in here, otherwise it could fall over. And after you add the water the first time, you're gonna wanna drain it and do it again, because that will pull out most of the heat. Now, here's the thing, is when your heat is here and your cold is here and they're far apart, they're gonna go really quick. And as they get closer, it's gonna go a lot slower. Because I'm not a physics person, I forget the term, but hey, just something to be aware of. Okay, we'll be here for a little while. Okay, we're in the last 5 minutes. As I'm splashing down with corn sugar. That's 2 ounces of corn sugar. I'm gonna stir that up so it doesn't burn to the bottom. There we go. Don't need such an intense boil while I'm stirring. Okay, here we go. The hop bag. Okay, I forgot to ask Trong if I have to wash that first, so I erred on the side of safety and washed it myself. So now the bag is in there. We've got 1 ounce of hops here. We'll drop that in there. Since it's kind of low, I'm only doing 1 gallon. I'm gonna stir it up a little bit to make sure it's making good contact. You wanna make sure your hop matter gets as much contact with the water as possible, or wort. There we go. And you can also stir the wort around it, and that'll help kind of keep contact going. and keep moving it. Okay, we have about 4.5 minutes here. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, it doesn't smell like anchovies, so we're good. Okay, that's it. Kill the heat. Now, you have a couple options. First option is, of course, not optional. You gotta get the hot bag out. And there we go. I'm just trying to make sure I don't burn myself. It's gonna take a second to drain it a little bit. You can take a spoon and kind of stir it a little if you want, but not real necessary. What you could do instead, it's a little easier, is just kind of give it a little squeeze. That'll get the majority of the liquid out. Depending upon how many hops you're using, I'm using 1, so it's fairly decent. I got a little bit of liquid, but not a lot. If I'm using like something stupid, like 4 ounces, I want this thing to be crazy, yeah, then I'm gonna have an issue. I have a lot of liquid in there and it's gonna take a second to drain, but with 1 ounce, it's nothing. You can also use this, from my understanding, if you're doing some specialty malts, and this is an extract brew and you're just adding some specialty malts. Then you don't need a colander or anything. Now, you got a couple options to cool this down. If you're new to brewing, follow Trong's recommendations. He is going to tell you to put this on, put your floating dip tube on, put the cool little thing that sucks air in, and make sure that it's filtered so it's clean, and then put it into like an ice bath or something to kind of cool it down. It's going to contract. Well, when it contracts, it's going to suck in oxygen, which you're going to need for the yeast, but it's not going to have all kinds of garbage that's in the air. If you've ever made sourdough, you know, just the air will actually basically infect the flour and water and give you sourdough bacteria or lactic bacteria, whatever it is. I'm not a bacteria person. Needless to say, I'm gonna do it a little differently, and still gotta put my keg grease on here, rinse this all off, make sure this is good. Actually, this is pretty warm from earlier when I was cleaning, so it should be okay, but I'll still clean it off. I'm gonna get this into a quick ice bath, cool it down. Remember not to exceed the liquid in here so it doesn't fall over. And once we get it cooled down, we'll pitch the yeast, put everything together like Trong told me to do, and get it into a fridge area that's going to allow it to ferment around the low 50s. Most people do not have fermentation control as far as temperature control. There are many, many, many yeasts out there. If you wanted a lager, you could use Kveik. Kveik will give you some of those lower temperatures that are going to give you nice lager. If you want to go warm, you're going to get more ale type flavors and aromas. And then if you're using something like, I think it's called 3470, I don't remember exact, that is a yeast that works really well under pressure to give you lager-like fermentation at slightly warmer temperatures, such as room temp. There's options. There's always options. You just need to learn what your options are. Most ales ferment around 68 degrees Fahrenheit. A lot of people can get that in a closet if they keep the AC pretty cool. Some people can't, because you have to keep in mind that the fermentation is going to generate about 3 to 4 degrees, maybe even as high as 5 degrees Fahrenheit in additional temperature during the fermentation. As it starts to slow down, it will cool back down, of course. Okay, let's get this chilled. I've decided I'm actually going to meet Trong about halfway. So instead of just throwing all this in while it's boiling, which will sanitize it, I had Star San, so I use that instead. But I went ahead, I'm dropping in the floating dip tube. I've got to put that on here, which is going to connect to the liquid side. That's my gas side over there. Before you put all this together, make sure you wash everything, and then you take the Mollicot, if I'm saying that correctly. Be very, very gentle. This stuff is very, very expensive, and you only need a tiny bit. So I'm barely opening it. So I can get squeezed out of that little hole. Of course I don't. There we go. He says you only need a tiny bit, almost like less than a pea, like half a pea, if that. So I'm gonna drip all the water out of there. Take this. Okay, I don't know, Trong, stuff's hard to spread. I might need more than a pea. Okay. And then he says to put it on both sides. So I'm just kind of rotating my fingers back and forth. And yes, I washed my fingers very good. Okay, I need a tiny bit more. There we go. Okay, that's really, really on there. I got quite a bit on there. I don't see it, but I feel it. I feel it everywhere. Okay, so here we go. I'm taking this. I'm gonna connect this here to the liquid side. Just a little hose going over the little hole. Push it up nice and tight so it's nice and snug. I'm gonna set this down like this. Let's make sure I got it on right. Yep. And I'm gonna turn it, and that's gonna lock it in place, okay? So it's technically kind of under pressure, I guess you'd say. These, you hand tighten, just hand tighten, okay? Make sure they're nice and snug. I've got my temperature probe. I'm still sitting over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's okay, not a problem. Here's what I'm gonna do. Yeah. Sanitary tip. I'm gonna put it on the gas line. This is gonna let the heat out, and when it starts to cool and it contracts, it's gonna suck the cold air in. We're gonna leave that on there. We're gonna leave it in my fermentation fridge. It's a fridge that I can control almost any temperature, sitting at 50 degrees right now. That should bring this down to about 50 degrees. I'm gonna put it in there, and I've got some heart issues, and needless to say, they've not been very nice past 2 days. So I'm tired. It's past 10 o'clock, well past my bedtime. I'm just gonna put it in there. Let it chill down. In the morning when I get up, I'm gonna walk in there, I'll bring it out, put it back on camera. I'm gonna pitch the yeast. And we're gonna put it back in there. Let it sit for a few hours, and then I'm gonna follow what Trong said, and we're gonna put on the spunding valve, the jellyfish, and we're gonna let it rock and roll. It's gonna seem like a fraction of a second for you, but for me, it's gonna be like 10 hours later. Okay, it's the morning. I'm sitting at 58 degrees. Not quite as cold as I'd like it. I'm gonna get it down a little bit more, but that's fine. I've decided to change the yeast, but I wanted to show you, for most people, you have problems, getting lager temps. If you can get lager temps, these two are great. Nova Lager, Diamond Lager, very similar, whatever's available. There are some differences, but it's very minor. If you can't control your temperatures, but you can keep it cool, you just can't get lager temps and you want to do a lager, okay, I'm still recommending ales for most people if they don't have good fermentation temperature control. A lot of people think they do, but this is not good temperature control. This is where it goes up and down maybe a degree, yeah. This stuff, 3470, yeah, this stuff works great for most people where they want to do pressure fermentation, they want to do lager, but they don't have lager temps. It works well. I don't remember the actual temperature range. Oh, there it is. It is 48.2, which is kind of crazy low, to 71.6. So you're still gonna have to keep it down in the lower ale temps. I'm actually gonna use something I didn't even realize I still had, but I used it recently and I had a little bit left. It's a Mexican lager yeast from White Labs 940. It's a liquid. I really wouldn't, use a liquid yeast on a 1 or 2 gallon because it's kind of a waste unless you're going to be doing several of them back to back and you want to do a yeast starter, and and you can use something like this with a mason jar from Trong. Another thing to let air in, because you need air when you're growing your yeast. You don't need air, you just need CO2, but you don't need air when you're trying to just let it eat the yeast, or eat the sugar, sorry. Okay, so let me open this up, okay? And once I get this going, I'm gonna put the spunding valve on because of course it's gonna build pressure. And yeah, now I should let it go for 4 hours. I gotta leave for the day, I'm going to work. So let's pop this up. We got lots of moisture in there, so I'm gonna have to set it kind of, I don't want to do that even. I don't want to drip, so I'm gonna leave it like that on top for a second. That's enough for a 5-gallon batch. It might be a little low because I didn't, get it going again, but I'm gonna use about probably close to a third of this. So it's a liquid yeast. A little bit of wort in there. It's already been eaten up as far as the sugars. I'm gonna go ahead and pour that. Poured closer to half, but it's all good. If you're gonna over pitch, go for it. If you're gonna under pitch, not recommend it. Under pitching, although it can be useful, can also has more possibilities for causing some off flavors and some issues. So, yeah, I'm dripping moisture. It's all good. Okay, I'm gonna get the spunding valve on here, get it back into the fermenter and let it rock and roll. It's already getting up close to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I gotta keep it down. I gotta double check my temps on that yeast, but I am pretty sure it is somewhere in the low 50s. So, appreciate you. Don't forget the taste test. We'll be doing a taste test on this next. Like, subscribe, yeah, appreciate the support. And Pot-au-Brew. If, like I said, you want a discount on it, you want to check it out, yes, it's an affiliate thing. I'll leave some information down below, save you some money. Just, yeah, check it out. Reach out to Trong, he'll take care of you. They are in very limited supply right now, as of this video.